So today's the 6th of November. Yesterday was remember the 5th of November. The gunpowder treason and plot. Guy Fawkes Day. Doesn't bode well, eh? Anyways, Americans are going to go to the polls, and make the very difficult decision of which puppet to vote for. Obama, the United Nations puppet, or Romney, the Mormon from the LDS Church. He'd be the first Mormon president. Think about that. Wow. And they have this age-old prophecy called the White Horse prophecy that, states that one day in the distant future, when it was written, America's Constitution would be hanging from a string, and this great and valiant leader from the LDS Church would step up to the podium of the kingdom of God and save America, the new Zion, because they consider America Zion. It's interesting how the Mormons are so affiliated with Zionist ideology. When you look at their buildings, their temples, one has no choice but to conclude that the grand architect was a Freemason. Never mind that Masonic temples are modest in comparison. It's common knowledge that the founders of Mormonism were full-on Masons. No, what's the difference anyways? The whole thing's controlled by the same puppet master who we can only call at this moment Robomni. I doubt if it'll change anything, Ron Paul seems to be derailed from this race quite early. Interesting. I've heard that Ron Paul's a Mason. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, all of the leaders that run our, so-called resistance or the mainstream or whatever, they're all they're often controlled by the same puppet masters, because puppet masters like to run two sides of the conflict all the time. They do that all the way through, because Ron Paul, I love his platform for the most part, but he never talks about a lot of key things that are destroying America. I guess he can't talk about everything, but one thing he could talk about is how any candidate that aspires to ascend to the throne of Washington D.C. is not a viable representative of the American people, because Washington D.C. is a city-state with its own constitution and its own agenda. How this ever could have happened, that you could have a capital that's actually a foreign city-state of a country, is beyond belief. This act was passed, I guess, way back in 1871 when this raw deal was passed. This city-state was ratified. This triumvirate was concluded between the city of London and Vatican City. I guess the American people by that time were indulging in the American dream. Remember what the late and great George Carlin said? They call it the American dream because you have to be sleeping in order to believe it. And they must have been in a coma back then, because that's quite a deal, eh? They took the capital of the Union out of the city of brotherly love, the Keystone State, and put it in a Vatican dictatorship. I'm not American, but if I was, I'd vote for Homer Simpson any day. I'm sure he'd do a much better job than any of these jokers are going to. You know, the only time I've ever voted in my life has been at 2 referendums that have passed by in my lifetime, and it wasn't because I had any like nationalistic aspirations for Quebec or anything. It's just because I believe in breaking up this country into 50 pieces. You know, if it's going to take it away from that commie federal government who's more emboldened to the British Empire than the Canadian citizenry. And, you know, I think that the United States should do the same. And, you know, I'd never vote in the United States either until there was a leader that stepped up to the plate and was making secession his platform. Because if you look at the goal of the globalists, their deal is to make everything bigger and bigger and bigger and easier to control and put everything under one big umbrella, just like the Vatican does with religion. So our deal should be to make things smaller and smaller and make it harder and harder for them to get through. Also, that way our politicians would be at arm's length. So they'd have something to be afraid of for a change. Anyways, that's my opinion. I think the vote is a complete waste of time, and I wouldn't even bother predicting on which clown is going to win this election.
I believe in an America where the separation of church and state is absolute, where no public official either requests or accepts instructions on public policy from the Pope, the National Council of Churches, or any other ecclesiastical source.